Once again, good morning, LifeHouse Church. Good morning. You are in for a special treat. A couple of months ago, Sean and I, like you would understand this, I got a lot of road time. Sean and I had about a 2.5-hour brainstorm on this series that we're starting today. And because we all got a story, we all got a testimony. And Alan was one of the ones that Sean and I felt like would be a good person to share a story. And I heard Alan's story for the first time on a drive to Monticello to pick up shoes. And needless to say, that story lasted all the way to Monticello and back. However, in fairness to Alan, our stories kind of intertwined. I kind of shared my stories, he was sharing his. Found out we had a lot of things in common, like we're both very shy individuals, don't have much to say, and stuff like that. So, y'all know that's not true. How do you think we kept talking? 2 men talking that long. You know, that's an accomplishment, right? Most of you ladies know what I'm talking about. But anyway, we're glad that you're here today, and everyone knows Alan here this morning. If you don't, Alan, this is Alan. He is our drummer, and he has a story to tell for us this morning, and not gonna lollygag around. We're going to go right into it. Alan, tell us first of all about your childhood.
Mom and Dad were married in the 50s. I'm a child of the very late 50s. I was born the next to the last day of 1959. So. December 30th of 1959, so I can say I'm a child of the 50s. And Mom was a homemaker, and Dad was a radio repairman in Brownsville. And then he got called up to, during the Cuban Missile Crisis as a reservist. He was called to Fort Chaffee, so we uprooted, went there, and then we came back to Brownsville, and he had the opportunity to come to work in Bowling Green as a television and radio repairman at G&H Appliance, and he did that, and we moved over on Park Street. Very normal childhood. I had the typical childhood accidents. I was sick for 18 months. I had encephalitis, mononucleosis, the measles, the mumps, chicken pox, all within 18 months, and I was pretty normal. Pretty normal kid. Went through a storm door, got 144 stitches in my back, and, I was a klutz. But Dad bought into the business, and we sold our house on Park Street and moved to Wakefield across from Potter Gray School. But we built the house because the money that he could borrow from the VA helped him buy into the business. So we built the house, and believe it or not, they built this 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house for $15,000 in 1963. And yeah. And the last time it sold for like $174,000. It's ridiculous. So, but anyway, we lived there, and Dad had a heart attack in 1967, a massive coronary. He was planting pine trees for the Boy Scouts through the Arbor Day Foundation, and they were supposed to ship them in 4 groups, and they sent them all at once, and they were going to die. So he was in the backyard, and he had a heart attack. And, so that was his first of 18 heart attacks between 1967 and 1970. And we bought a house on Covington because the interest rates were down again. And we moved through our backyard. It was kind of cool. And packing the refrigerator through a cut fence, all the way through the yard and everything. But the house flooded twice while we lived there, which added to Dad's stress. The business was struggling with the new technology coming out, circuit boards instead of tubes and things like this. Dad was like, what am I going to do for a job? So he started expanding the appliance business and getting into wiring cable and things like that. So, and then he had a major coronary episode in May. Still remember it. Of 1970, after an explosion at the street ruined our house, and we were going to have to move out for an extended period, and it was just too much. And I talked to him on the phone the night that he died, and he said he was doing great. He sounded good. He sounded full of himself and full of life. But I had noticed a change after we were in church. He was a deacon and a Sunday school teacher. And I won't mention the name of the church out of respect for our brothers and sisters that do live by the red letters. But when he got sick, the church stood by us and helped us as much as they could and everything, and brought meals and everything. And then when he passed away, May the 21st of 1970, church swarmed in and took care of everything, meals, babysitting, all of that stuff, neighbors rallied, and because Dad was loved, and Mom didn't have a job to speak of. She didn't have a driver's license. Her name wasn't even on the checking account. She couldn't even write a check. The attorneys kind of took her to the bank, and we basically lost the business. Dad's half of the business, which was worth about $400,000, and they talked Mom into taking $10,000 for it. And so that was the first domino that started Mom's fretting and stewing and everything. Of course, the house was in disrepair after the explosion, and we were living there with chairs pushed up against heaters to keep them in the walls because we had radiant wall heat. I could walk through the living room and put my hand flat on the ceiling where the ceiling had dropped and everything. Mom's like, where am I going to get the money for this? And then Dad was smart. He had insurance, but he also had $74,785 worth of medical bills, which Mom wrote a check for. But in that time, we had very few friends that kind of stuck with us, except for Mom's hairdressers, and they were homosexual, and Steve and Jerry, and they gave my sister a dog because she was grieving quite hard, and a little silver poodle named Martini that loves showers in the duck pond. But anyway, which is why she liked showers so much. She'd get in the duck pond and she'd smell like a duck, so we'd have to give her a bath. But anyway, we were still going to church, and then we invited Steve and Jerry to come to church with us. And that afternoon after church, the lead deacon came to our house, and I overheard him speaking to my mother that we were going to have to shun Jerry and Steve if we wanted to continue to go to church there, and because of their lifestyle. And in the same breath, the deacon hit on my mother and told her that if she ever had need of a man or his services, he was readily available. And this man was married to my mother's dearest friend at the church. And so that kind of made me go on religion, really. And I kind of ran from it. Mom kind of ran from it. She crawled into a bottle, which made alcohol easily available to me. And I learned the trick of steaming open vodka labels and filling them back up with water and regluing them at 11 years old. So I did it to impress my friends. Hey, you want a shot of vodka? So I started binge drinking. I really didn't drink every day, but I would plan parties where I could drink. And I pretty much did what I wanted. Mom was out of the picture. She drank all the time. She was running around and had different men. She struggled. My sister, being 16, total rebellion, left me with my little brother who was 5 and 6 at the time, left me with him, and I did the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry and everything for me and him to make sure that we could get to school and stuff, which created more animosity and more stress and everything, and more reasons to binge and everything. And I can honestly say I didn't do a lot of drugs. I can tell you on these hands how many times I smoked marijuana in my life, and it just wasn't for me. I preferred to drink, and it just, I mean, our life was falling apart, and we lost the house on Covington. For the first time in my life, we rented a house, and that was just alien to me. You know, I couldn't drive a nail without the landlord's approval or anything, and so Mom being out of the picture and stuff, I resorted to a life of crime. I used to steal Coke bottles off of people's back porches and turn them in for money to buy cigarettes and beer. So, I mean, I laugh about it now because I think, gosh, I'd still be in jail if they'd have caught me. But then we worked up, me and the neighborhood kids, we worked up a scam where we would steal the Coke bottles that we took in the day before, back from the store, and take them to another store. So we were quite the little syndicate of bottle thieves in the neighborhood. And that's no claim to fame, but that shows you how far my life had gone from Sunday school and church and Mom and Dad to nothing, and fending for myself and my brother.
So what happened to you? You had a normal childhood. You were saved early in your childhood too, weren't you? Before your dad's death?
At 9 years old, I came to the realization that my father really bought into God and faith, and I wanted him to be proud of me. So I went down front at the Baptist church we attended, and I made my declaration of salvation, and I was baptized. And I still have great respect for the pastor. We are still very good, very dear friends. He preached my mom's funeral, so we're still in contact.
So after your dad's death and everything kind of went downhill from there, tell me about your life after high school.
I was told in high school that I was of average intelligence and the military would be a good choice. And so I went into the Army, but my senior year I spent a lot of time drinking, because in Colorado, drinking age for beer was 18, and I was 18, and guess what? I drank everywhere I went. And they had special bars set up for just beer, and so my buddies and I, we would drink and drink and drink, and then we'd buy more, and we'd go to my house and drink and drink and drink. And along with that were, girls and everything else that went along with it. And, it was just, it's a miracle we graduated. It really is. I mean, when you hang on to the side of a car going 45 miles an hour on a snow and ice-covered road in the middle of Denver, hanging onto the car door, skiing down the road, it's a miracle I'm still here. It really is. Just some of the weird things I did.
So tell me about your life once you went in the Army. How did your life change then?
Well, being 18 and having a weapon and access to all types of alcohol, because you only had to be 18 to drink anything. We started having platoon parties and hooch parties and everything else, and I would literally drink myself sober. I mean, I would drink so hard and so long. 24 hours would pass and I would still be drinking. And I was hooked on binge drinking. I really was. that was my thing. I like to drink myself stupid and then see how long I could keep drinking. And I mixed it all. I drank everything. It didn't matter.
So during this time in your life when you were in the service, were there other things that you did that you know you were on your own? And
Of course, I got stationed at Fort Knox, and being from around here, I had connections in Bowling Green, so all my friends were like, "Bowling Green, that's a campus town." Yeah, Western, yeah. So they would supply the ride, because I didn't even have a car in the service. They would supply the ride, and we'd come down here, and we'd stay with different friends or my grandmother or something, and they'd go hit the bars and stuff, and I'd go visit my girlfriend, which is Lisa, my boy's mother, and I would hang out with her. And, you know, we rekindled our high school relationship, and we eventually got married while we were in the service, and had Jeremy, my oldest son, and then 10 months later we had Josh, who's sitting back there, probably hearing some of this for the first time, but he was born out of service. While we were at Fort Knox, I started running around on Lisa, and had a couple of affairs, and nothing I'm proud of, nothing. It wasn't with a movie star or anything, it was just with a person. And because I felt like I was all that in a bag of chips, especially when I drank. And so our marriage was strained then. And then when she told me she was pregnant with Josh, it was very strained. And because I didn't know what to do, because I was getting short. I only had like 9 months left in the Army, and I'm like, what am I going to do? You know? He's going to be born out of the Army, and you know, what am I going to do? And anyway, I'm glad he's still here. And if you ladies understand this, he detached from the placenta and reattached within minutes. So he had a double ring placenta, which means he's a double miracle. But my boys are 10 months and 25 days apart. They were born in the same year. And I think that's one of the reasons his mom had trouble with me. Because I kept her pregnant for over 18 months. But we struggled out of the service, and came back to Bowling Green, and I couldn't get a job. And then Josh was born, and we were hit with, you know, then an exorbitant amount of medical bills. It's what, $40,000 to have a kid now. We didn't even have a doctor, we had midwives, and it was still $8,000. And to me, not making any money, that was a lot of money. So that led to stress, that led to more drinking, and you know, so it was rough. And then came cable. Cable. And Skinamax and Showtime. And I got addicted to pornography. And then the internet made it even easier. But VHS and beta and all this other stuff. And we actually had nights where we would rent 3 or 4 pornographic movies and mix up a bunch of alcoholic beverages and have a bunch of people over and watch porno with the sound turned down, and everybody kind of make up their own lines and stuff, and get trashed. And so that led to more affairs, of course, because.
Would you say you were, what you tell me about your story, you had some depression issues too?
Chronically depressed, and really didn't realize it until I started having what they call stress-related muscle tension migraine. And put me on a very mild, old style antidepressant. And it helped immensely, but I had no emotion. I mean, it's like I had a lot. I was very boring. I was working third shift at the time, which made it even harder on the marriage and harder on the boys. I know they remember a lot of fun things that we used to do because I worked third shift, because I'd stay up and we'd go do stuff. And, I helped them get started on lawn mowing businesses and stuff like this. And, just some hangout time and everything, but there was no real family cohesion. And still God was very distant from us, my wife and I both. And the kids only went to church a couple of 3 times, and for special occasions or a funeral or something, that was it. And of course the depression led me to drink and also look outside of the home for other avenues of release, and then the pornography also. So I was just in a swirling vortex of stupid. I really was.
It was at the latter part of your marriage, your mother died. I mean, you took some pretty drastic measures after her death, didn't you?
Actually, it was before. Mom had been diagnosed in '96 with a genetic bleeding disorder called von Willebrand's disease. And it's the equivalent of being a hemophiliac, except women can't be hemophiliacs, only men. But there can be a K factor which causes the blood to clot that can be missing in a von Willebrand's patient. And she had this, and she had it very drastically. And she started bleeding through her stool and her urine, but she wasn't telling anybody. And we finally convinced her to go to the hospital right before Christmas in '96. And she had a hemoglobin of 1. The average person has a hemoglobin of 14. The average trauma patient that comes through the ER with multiple gunshot wounds or multiple limb amputations and stuff like that has a 3. She had a 1, and she was functioning and talking. She had done this for so long, this was normal. And so they started treating her for the von Willebrand's, and they discovered cancer. And they did a colostomy, or a colonectomy, and she ended up with an ostomy bag. But they discovered ovarian cancer. And during all of this, her kidneys had shut down, so she was on dialysis. And the oncologist took one look at her. Dr. Fleener in Vanderbilt took one look at her and said, "Well, darling, you're snake bit. Nothing I can do. Have a nice day." She comes home and says, "It's like this. In 2 months, I won't be able to take dialysis anymore. I cannot take radiation or chemo because of the dialysis. I'm going to die." And this was in May of '97, and Lisa and I had been separated, and I was living with Mom, trying to work third shift and take her back and forth to dialysis and everything. I was just sliding so fast. And she went to dialysis one day, and she came home and she said, "It's only going to be another week or 2 now, and I can't do it anymore. It's taking too much out of me." And of course, doctors being doctors, take this pill for this pill for this, this pill for this, this pill for this, and how about these for that? And so she had a medicine cabinet full of pills, and they were all pills. They weren't capsules. They weren't. They were pills. Plain old like an aspirin pill. And I had had a fight with with Lisa and Josh's mom, and it ended bitterly. And so I went to Mom's medicine cabinet and started dumping pills in my hand, shoving them in my mouth and chewing them, and chasing them with beer. I took approximately 150 pills, but I took Haldol, which is an antipsychotropic, Halcyon, which is a tranquilizer, Soma compound, which is a muscle relaxant and anti-inflammatory, Flexeril, which is a muscle relaxant and anti-inflammatory, Meprigan, Percocet, Darvocet, Darvon, tabletized morphine, because my mother was a cancer patient, they gave her morphine. And then to top it off, to keep me from throwing up, I took probably 15 Phenergan and drank 2 more beers, got in my van, and drove. And I went the exact opposite way that I thought anybody would look for me, and which worked, because Alicia sent the police out to my farm and everything looking for me, and I went the total opposite way. And when I was driving, I remember all of this because when I was driving, everything was doing like this, because I am really messed up. I had no business getting in a vehicle, guys, none. No business at all. And I was way drunk, and plus all the pills were starting to take effect. So I was seeing like 10 or 11 of everything. And I covered my eye, and I could see one. So I kept driving. And I drove like this, and people passed me and everything, and I'm driving. And I drove to a friend's house in Auburn. I worked with him on third shift at the plant I worked at. And I remember pulling up in his driveway, parking the van, shutting it off, and getting out. But I didn't close my door. And I don't know why I didn't close my door. I guess I was going to get back in. And I walked to his door, and I knocked on the door really hard. It was like 1 in the afternoon, and he was still asleep because of third shift. And he came to the door, and I said, "Don't call anybody, let me die." And the next thing I remember, I woke up on the 6th floor of the Men's. And with a horrible taste of charcoal in my mouth, like I'd been eating the grill. It was horrible. And I was struggling. I really was. They put me on Prozac, which I'd been on the whole time anyway, but they put me on an upper dose of Prozac, which is why I'm glad I don't take these things. But Lisa came up and visited me and told me it was over, and I was able to start healing. And it was during this time that I met my second wife, Denise, and she was at first she was very beneficial. She helped me watch after Mom and stuff, and she was there when Mom died. Mom died September the 19th of 1997 at 5:05 in the morning. And that was the first morning that I'd actually slept. Anyway, Denise and I promised her that we wouldn't just use each other. We'd try to make a relationship. We decided to marry after my divorce was final. We got married at the hospital in the lobby where we met. Actually, we met at the hospital. The following week, we went to church, and we went to Hillview Heights at the unctioning of her brother-in-law who married us. He's a Pentecostal preacher. She was raised Pentecostal, I was raised Southern Baptist. She said, "Split the difference, go to Hillview." So we went to Hillview, and we got married on December 30th of 97. And the following Sunday, we got married on a Saturday night, and it snowed to beat the band, didn't it, Josh? And hadn't snowed all year, and then it snows that night. And the following Sunday, we went to church, and we were sitting in the back, and then we moved up the next week, and then on January the 22nd, the same praise team was up for some reason. Somebody had an illness or something, but they did the same set, the same music, the very next week. So 2 weeks in a row, I heard the same altar song, and it was "Come Just As You Are," and Jeff Brooks was singing it, and Darla Day was backing him up. And it's a beautiful song, and anyway, I just stood up and ran to the altar, face plant, and stayed there. And it changed everything. Changed everything about how I looked at everything. I was forgiven. I knew at that moment, as soon as I asked for it. And all this junk came swirling off of me. Just, as if, you took a shot back or a Dyson or whatever vacuum you prefer, and just sucked it off. And immediately my language changed. I quit cursing. I quit taking the Lord's name in vain, which, if you ask Josh, I could use in very colorful prose. A lot of my anger issues were all but gone. I really struggled with anger. Quick side story, I got so mad one time I was helping Jeremy, my oldest, work on his bike, and he kept asking me question after question after question, and he had tried to fix the bike with a pair of pliers and had rounded the nut, so I was trying to grab it with a pair of channel locks, and he kept asking, and I went like this and busted my knuckles wide open on his seat of his GT bike, and I took the pliers and I slung them and stuck them in the side of the wall that far from his face. And he was walking. And I don't even know if he remembers it or not, but there was a hole in our aluminum siding where they stuck in the wall. And I knew I had a problem, but I didn't do anything about it. And that was in like '89. But anyway, all of these things were just taken from me at the altar. Seriously, all of them were taken from me.
The weight of the world was lifted off your shoulders on that day.
It was unbelievable. It really
Forgiveness,
was.
mercy, grace. So, with that experience, everything was pretty much perfect. You didn't have any.
Now the rest of the story.
Tell us about your journey from there in church life.
Denise and I stayed with you on a pretty regular basis, and we got really plugged into several different ministries, which led eventually to burnout. But honestly, we were in about 22 different ministries. We did street music ministry. We did, of course, Godstock and everything. I was on one of the security teams and parking teams. I taught 2 Sunday school classes every Sunday. I taught men's ministry every other Wednesday night. I helped in the kitchen preparing meals on Wednesday night. We were involved in all this. Plus, we drove once a month to Russellville, to Hillview Heights, Russellville, and played on the praise team over there. And so we were spread pretty thin, and we didn't leave a lot of time for us. And Denise, every time everything would get going good, Denise would come up with a health issue. And seizures, or she'd throw her back out at work and not be able to work, and all of this stuff. And, I can't recall the word that she has, but if anybody's sick around her, she's sicker. There were 2 bankruptcies involved in our marriage, our 14-year marriage. We filed bankruptcy twice on medical bills. And matter of fact, when we separated, she was telling everybody that she had cancer, and she had no cancer. And she lost her job because she had told them that she was dying of cancer and she needed money for treatment because I wouldn't give her money. So they took up a collection, and she didn't lose any hair or anything, so they...
During that time, you also, before all this happened, you guys got separated. Y'all attended some churches and saw some pretty damaging stuff in church, didn't you?
Yeah. Hillview Heights, Logan County became Crossroads Church. And right after they did, about a year afterwards, they were given some land in a will. They were left some land after somebody died, and they decided to build a building. And during this time, the church was struggling with what size building, what shape building, all this other stuff. And believe it or not, the pastor took us through, as a church congregation, took us through The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. And everybody read it? Is everybody ready? Okay, he took us through it. And the deacons and some of the people didn't like that fact. They thought he should be preaching something new and something this, and not teaching out of somebody else's book. But he wanted us to come together as a church and be purpose-driven. And anyway, it was the week after Mother's Day that year. The deacons literally stood up and took him by the arm and escorted him out with several people that were followers of his, and came to me and said, "You going to stay with us, or are you going to follow him?" And I said, "I'm not following anybody, I'm following him, and what you all just did is wrong," and I walked out. So that was split number one. We went to another church, and they had just bought a building, and were moved into the building, and I did all kinds of restoration work on this building and everything, on my days off and everything, and some people didn't like the way the music was going and stuff like this, so they split. So that's split number two. And then the pastor left. So we had an interim pastor, and he stood up and said he couldn't take it anymore, so he leaves, and I got installed as a deacon at this church, and I took care of the welfare of the church. I was deacon trustee, so I cleaned the church and everything. And the pastor we had didn't like the way I did things, and so he called a meeting of the other deacons and had me thrown out. And because he felt like I was after his job, which I wouldn't take his job. I wouldn't take Tom's job if he offered it. I'll be honest with you. There's way more on this man's shoulder than you all realize. And that hurt the other deacons' feelings because they really liked the music and stuff that we did. So they split and started their own church. And so, I'm bouncing church to church to church. I feel like a grasshopper, honestly, or a butterfly. And
so at this point in your life, what did you think that God had begun to reveal about himself to you during this time? And how did he reveal it?
first of all, he told me that church people aren't his people. God's people are like God. They love, they trust, they forgive quickly, they restore, they build up, they don't destroy. And that was the one thing that I kept looking for, is God's people. I kept thinking, there's God's people out there. There's got to be God's people out there. And that's the one thing that kept me going from church to church to church. And I found a few churches like that along the way, and that weren't all about certain people or certain music styles or certain editions of the Bible or whatever. They were about love and respect and the mutual coming together of one accord to help bring in His kingdom here on earth. And I was involved in a couple of music ministries in Franklin and in Portland. I really focused myself on the young people. That's why I love to pick on you guys and love to have good rapport with you guys. And I wear animal socks because you guys are important to me. Because you guys are the future of this church. Without you, the church dies when we're gone. And so you guys are going to be the banner carriers. You guys are going to be the ones standing up here and sitting back there behind the drum sets. And if we don't keep you guys engaged and excited, and if your drummer has to act a little stupid sometimes, to keep you guys coming back, then, if that's what it takes, I'll keep doing it, but you guys are my love. I mean, you're my heart, my music, and you guys are my love and my ministry, because I have such a tender heart for teenagers, because that's when I was lost. From the time I was 12 to 30, I was out there. And then I was 38 and I was out there 18 years. So you guys, what you're doing now is very important to me. You make me proud. Okay?
Well, what brought you to LifeHouse, Alan? You said you felt like a butterfly or a caterpillar jumping around from church to church, trying to find a church that resonated with you.
I got transferred by my job up here to Bowling Green and lost my house in Franklin because of the divorce and everything else. So I'm living in my son's basement on Bend River Road, and I'm sitting on my drum throne, and it's not very comfortable. It's okay for 15, 20 minutes, but anyway, I'm sitting on my drum throne at the computer, and it's like, golly, this is really bad. So I've got $20. I'm going to go find me a computer chair. So I go to Walmart and I find a computer chair, and I pick up a couple of cat food, cat treats and stuff, and I'm standing there. And Chris is ringing me up. Chris is working at the checkout counter, and he said, "Computer chair." I said, "Yeah." I'm tired of sitting on my drum throne. "You play drums?" I said, "Yeah, I play drums." He said, "You play drums at church?" I said, "Not anywhere in particular. I'm looking for a church." And he said, "We're looking for a drummer." And so he said, let me get your number and I'll get you in contact with Sean, our music leader. So he does that, and Sean calls me that afternoon. I mean, just bam, right away. Cell phone feedback. So I came that following Sunday with my red congas, if anybody remembers that. You all remember that? And my congas and my little tambourine stand and everything, and I auditioned and played the same Sunday. So, and I fell in love with you guys. I did. God was here. I mean, it was like I walked in, and Bubba and his trivia and his sports knowledge and Michael's voice and Crystal's voice and Sean's guitar and leadership and the kids, all the kids that you all minister to, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I said, "Yeah, here's home. Here's home." And here I am.
So with all the church problems that you had been through, Alan, What gave you the courage to go back to church, try to get plugged into a church?
God never gives up, and He never gave up on me. And that story of the prodigal son, or the 99, or the lost coin, read those parables and insert Alan, insert yourself, it doesn't matter. But I was that prodigal. He kept beckoning, and he kept running to me, and I had to keep chasing him. Wherever he led me, I had to go. Sometimes he hooked a hard left, sometimes he did a bootleg and spun around and figure eighted, but he kept on, and he kept drawing me, and he kept unctioning me in my heart and in my spirit to stay the course, because your restoration is still in progress, and I need you. And,
so your story is a story of restoration. We see that on the screen back here. If you could leave these people with one message today, Alan, what would that message be? How do you think this story of restoration is going to end for you?
At my salvation experience, when I truly came to understand what God meant and what He was really all about, He opened my spiritual mind's eye, and I saw my life, and I saw my end, and I'm standing before the white throne judgment, and I have to look Dad in the eye and say, yes, I took your name in vain. Yes, I committed adultery. I murdered in my heart. I've stolen. I've done all these things. I've broken everyone. I've even walked away from you, God. And my Savior walks up to me and puts his arm around me. He says, but Daddy, he's one of mine. And Abba Father goes, come here, son. Come here. And I climb up in his lap and I put my head on his chest. And I hear the heartbeat of 1,000 like me. He says, be at rest. Be at rest. And he wipes that last tear. And I'm forever in his glory. That's when it's complete. I'm still under construction, guys. I fall down every day. I fall down just like when I was learning to ride a bike. And Dad comes over, picks me up, dusts me off, and says, let's try it again, son. Because you're not done. So if you guys don't get anything else, just remember, his lap's waiting for you. And his heartbeat is for you. And when you get to hear his heartbeat and it matches yours that one day, you'll know. You'll know it was worth it. The church splits, the anger, the frustration, the near-death experiences, everything. You'll know. And all I've got to say is, glory to God that I'm still here. And I thank you guys for being such a loving, kind, Jesus church.
Thank you, Alan, for sharing your story with us, my brother. We love you. You know, Alan's not who he used to be. He's not who he used to be. Scripture says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5,